Well, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas demonstrations continue to inflame tensions at college campuses throughout the country, most notably at Columbia University, where police arrested more than 100 protesters this week. Now the Ivy League university has implemented a hybrid classroom schedule for the remainder of the semester to support safety concerns for their Jewish students. House Speaker Mike Johnson traveled to the Upper East Side of New York City today, where he spoke with Jewish students at Columbia and held a press conference where he called for the university president to resign for her yielding to the dangerous mob rule on the college campus. Can more be done to protect the safety of Jewish students at Columbia and other universities? And what does this tell us about the state of America? Joining me now to discuss this is former Congresswoman Michele Bachmann. She served on the House Intelligence Committee during her time in Congress. She is now the Dean of the Robertson School of Government at Regent University and chair of FRC's Board of Directors. She is also co-chair of the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, welcome back to the program. Always great to see you.
Thanks again, Tony. Always a pleasure to be with you.
So give us your reaction to this escalating rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses across the country and how these protests have turned violent in the last several days.
Well, it's way out of the norm. This is not normal protest anymore. This approach is something that I think you could call a mass psychosis. Literally, in a matter of a couple weeks' time, we went from having young students being led by actually a lot of foreign students. About 40% of the people who are protesting come from foreign nations. They came from the river to the sea to now quite literally on these campuses, they're calling for violence. They're calling for violence by calling for people to become martyrs. Martyrs for the cause. What? Martyrs like the Arab Palestinians were martyrs on October 7th. But then they're calling continually, their chants are death to Israel, death to the United States. And at Yale, they pulled down the American flag. Students are holding up signs with arrows pointing at Jewish students, saying that this will be next. This needs to be the next target for destruction. So now we've moved away from free speech. We're not in the realm of free speech anymore. I remember from my law school days in constitutional law, you can protest an action or a policy, but once you've crossed the line into calling for violence, then it's over. And we're at that point, Tony, at Harvard, at Yale, at Columbia, at Cal Poly and Humboldt, in college after college. Now it's moved into violence, especially with the erection of these campuses, of these encampments of tents, pup tents that are popping up. And so now the protesters are taking over the physical property and the land. In fact, at Cal Poly in Northern California, they've taken over buildings. So now a line is crossed. This reminds us of 1968 and the anti-war protesters. They were violent extremists. They called for the violent overthrow of the United States government. We're seeing calls for the overthrow of the United States government when they call for death to America, death to Israel. So at this point, action needs to be taken. The control needs to be brought back into those who run the universities. So they need to revoke the student visas of those who are foreign students who are calling for the overthrow of the United States and for death to Israel. Because now we're seeing Jewish students violated and violence brought against them and levels of attack verbally against them that would also be considered harassment and incitement to violence. So we're now at a point, Tony, when a corner has been turned. And so now I commend Speaker Johnson. I commend the Republicans who went to Columbia University. They rightly told the president of the school to gain control back of the school, and they heard nothing positive in response from the president. So they rightly called for her resignation. When you have our President Biden giving out billions of dollars against what the Supreme Court ruled to students who are calling for the death of the United States and the death to Israel, now things have to stop. We need to reset. And we're seeing that our nation is getting out of control, just like in Germany in the 1930s, when academics and students on the college campuses in Germany were calling for death to the Jews. Unbelievably, in America in 2024, we're hearing calls for death to Jews and death to America and our own country. And we're bailing these students out with billions of dollars of our money. This is absurd to the point of absurdity, and it has to end.
So, Michele, let me ask you this question. I mean, should we really be surprised with what's been happening through this long march through the institutions? You made reference to the 1960s, where the left has gone through, basically cleared the deck of any moral foundation. And then I don't think you can see this apart from the spiritual forces that are at play here when we're talking about Israel and the Jewish people. So we've basically kicked God and an understanding of transcendent truth and morality out of our public institutions, and then comes, I would just say, a demonic presence through this anti-Semitism.
We've seen the demonic, Tony, since the genocide on October 7th. And that was beyond the pale for people watching. We haven't seen anything that barbaric in our lifetimes. And immediately within 24 hours, we saw the demonic narrative take hold, where those who were the murderous terrorist perpetrators calling for killing Jews and raping Jews and torturing Jews, we saw them proclaim, hey, we're the victim here. We're the victim. As a matter of fact, we own their land and they all need to die. I mean, this is in the level of bizarre. So then, when you see the upside down, that is clearly demonic. There's like a witchcraft source to all of this. So yes, it's terrible. But again, I think you stated it rightly at the beginning of your remarks, Tony, when you stated that we've seen this through the long march through the institutions. And so what we're seeing on the campus lawn and the campus green, this is what's taught every day in college campuses. This is what the professors have been pushing. This is what the students have been taking in. So from their perspective, they consider themselves morally righteous because they're putting themselves out subject to arrest because that's what they were taught to be true by their fraudulent professors. So what the students have been taught across the United States of America explains why, in part, evangelical youth, in an article I read 2 days ago, it said that evangelical youth between the ages of 18 and 24 have dropped their support of Israel and the Jewish state by 50%. That didn't happen by accident. Their parents support Israel and love Israel and the Jewish people. What's happened is that the influence of TikTok, which there are 20 anti-Israel statements on TikTok for every pro-Israel statements. For 20 anti-Israel, there's one pro. They're getting it from TikTok, from the culture, from music, but also in the classroom. And that's where we have to have a distinct difference. Family Research Council is a distinct difference, putting forth a biblical worldview. The number one character in the Bible is God. The number two character is Israel. And the Bible teaches us unequivocally that the nations of the world need to bless Israel and the Jewish people and bless them and not curse them. And what we're seeing on American campuses is not only cursing Israel, but calling for the death of Jews and, tragically, the death of America as well.
There's about 30 seconds left, Michele, but this week, I think fueling this as well, Nancy Pelosi, echoing the words of Chuck Schumer, gave an interview where she said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should resign. That would not be tolerated for an ally, calling upon an allied country in the middle of a war to resign. This is insane.
It's insane because Nancy Pelosi, Tony, is a spokeswoman for the Democrat Party. And unfortunately, she's agreeing with the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, and the leadership of the Democrat Party. They've shown their true colors. Their true colors are that they are now anti-Israel. They've, quite frankly, pulled the Team Israel jersey off their backs, and they've instead put on Team Iran, because Team Iran is Hamas. Team Iran is Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So that's Nancy Pelosi. She is part of the pro-Team Iran.
Michele Bachmann, always great to see you. Thanks for taking time to join us today.
Thank you.